The journey begins. This will be a sort of long-winded story of my start in photography from the time I was a child to the present day in early 2019. From an early age, photography was something that would come and go in my life. It only made sense when connecting all the dots afterwards. I originally aspired to be a fiction writer, but I also grew up loving to draw and paint. Simply put, I yearned to create stories and art to express myself that others can enjoy. Photography came into my view when I vividly remembered being told by my elementary art teacher, Mrs. Cooper, that everyone in the class should take photography class in high school. She mentioned that it was fun and worthwhile, and I didn't give it much thought until many years later. In junior high, I was given a disposable camera from my parents to take pictures of a zoo I visited on a field trip. I can't tell you what the pictures ended up as because the roll of film sat in a plastic body camera for over 8 years and was ruined when I foolishly opened it, overexposing the entire roll. I doubt they were any good, but this was an important step in my journey. Photographing animals seemed to be a lot of fun. My photographic interest heightened ever more due to a video game system. 2009 rolls around, and I am gifted a Nintendo DSi for Christmas that year. For anyone that doesn't know video game handhelds, this was the first Nintendo DS with a built-in camera. Equipped with a whopping several megapixels, let me say that I probably spent more time taking pictures and using the goofy special effects than actually playing any games. Over-the-top editing expanded my creativity, and augmented reality photos in real time took up my time. The next couple of years, I used this little device to nurture my early composition techniques. Finally, the photographer in me was being birthed. Now a sophomore in high school, I recall the early exposure of being told of photography classes. Enrolling in 2 semesters, the first being film and the second digital, I was completely enamored to say the least. It was engaging and fun, and all the more with the supportive teacher I had. I still have some computer scans of my first assignments using film. These proof sheets show some rather blurry captures, some over and underexposed, and a few sharp and in focus. The second assignment had us working with landscapes, so my mother drove me to what I later know as Siebenthaler Fen, not too far away from my house. This early exposure to nature once again tapped my interest and abilities. Anyways, later I picked up a digital photography with ease, using a loaner Nikon DSLR for much of the digital assignments, my first time using a real expensive camera too. The colors, the instant feedback of checking my progress, my ideas were set free and flourished. Most of my work at the time was still objects just around the house and pictures of my mother and I, not so much of nature, although I did experiment with that. This is the time period where I learned how to take self-timer portraits, I created a photo series, and I wandered around my backyard and town in search of imagery. Using a copy of Adobe Photoshop Premiere Elements at school, I sought for a lot of wacky and over-top effects once again that would not go too well in contests. But I didn't care. This was for me as good as art can get. Capturing an image and using post-processing, the whole entire process was neat. Using the cutting mats, the paper trimmer, choosing the matte color and size, and ply thickness. Where drawing and painting was too slow for me, photography became my field of choice. It felt as though I had a sore throat my entire life, and now I began to have a voice. Digital photography was the medicine I needed. Now, I first began diving deep into the art of photography at the end of 2013. I was gifted a Canon Rebel T3 bundled with a Canon 18-55mm kit lens from my parents. Moving hastily around the house taking pictures of every still object, the dog, and with my first photo of me being in the mirror, I exhausted all my indoor opportunities, and I became very eager to get outside in the freezing cold and explore the local parks a few minutes from my house. This was before I had a driver's license, so I made my way via bicycle. Both fun and carefree, I didn't matter how cold it was. The single trip was a photographic bonanza for me. Graduating high school in 2015 left me directionless and confused as to what I should do with my life. The multitude of options froze my decision making that I ended up taking a year off to hopefully find myself. This was obviously not an overnight endeavor, and so in 2016 seemed to be the catalyst for everything I had known to that point. All the pieces fell into place where I made a little spot in the local newspaper with a simple image of a Canada goose. This was also the year that one of my best friends and I went to John Bryan State Park for a day, and where I was floored by the enormity of what was possible. That autumn, I made a conscious decision to enroll in online photography classes with the New York Institute of Photography. The year 2017 was when things started to really look up for me. That same best friend and I drove up to a place called the Narrows Reserve for a day where my skills were further enlivened. I finally got my driver's license that year, and out of excitement explored tooth and comb every natural location around my county and eventually beyond. I set a goal for 2018 to be the year I took this passion seriously, and fortunately it paid off. This has certainly been the hardest working year so far, with each one subsequently becoming more and more. You can clearly see in 3 years, my gear and clothing reflected my passion and drive to pursue photography head-on. 2016 to 2018 was what I now consider my baby years, where I developed the skills and experience necessary to achieve great imagery. So far, 2019 is looking to be my first big break in the local public and beyond. To this day, I'm ever more grateful for all the people I've met along the way during my career. The most exciting thing for me is watching my skills increase and style mature with time. In a couple of years, it already has. Personally, for me, the journeys and experiences when taking images is equally as imperative as the final photo itself. Looking onward, I wonder what is next.